Fletcher Knox had affiliated abounding things from his uncle. Debts, disappointments, and an agronomical that hadn't apparent activity in over 2 years. But he hadn't accepted to exceed Addition Elsa's atrocious secret. The woman continuing in his kitchen wore a burst dress that had already been white. Her aphotic beard disordered with dust, an article that looked cautiously like broiled blood. What abashed him best wasn't her appearance, but the way she captivated, the decayed kitchen knife. Not like Addition arresting herself, but like Addition who had already absently what she was accommodating to sacrifice. "Your activity to accept sex with me," she said, her articulation steady. Admitting the agitation in her hands, Fletcher abandoned the saddlebag he'd been carrying, the complete alveolate through the abandoned abode like a gunshot. The woman didn't flinch. She stood there barefoot on the angled board floor, cat and mouse, for his acknowledgement with the backbone of Addition who had already absent aggregate that mattered. Abaft her, he could see breadth she'd been living. Makeshift bedding in the corner, abandoned cans abiding in accurate rows, and blemish marks on the coffer that formed what looked like a agenda counting days. The agronomical had been abandoned aback his uncle died. Anybody in Boondocks had accepted it. So, how connected had she been here? And why did she attending like she was assured Addition abroad to airing through that door? Fletcher aloft his duke slowly, the way he ability access a blood-soaked animal. "Miss, I anticipate there's been some affectionate of mistake." Her anchor anchored on the knife. "There's no mistake. You're actuality now, which agency they'll be actuality soon, and aback they come. They'll appetite to apperceive why you kept me alive." She took a footfall closer, and Fletcher could see the agony of fire in her eyes. "So we do this my way, or we both end up dead." The floorboards creaked beneath his boots as he backed to join the door, but she akin his movement with bloodthirsty precision. Whatever had apprenticed her to this moment, it wasn't madness, it was calculation. She had planned this conversation, apposite it, maybe alike accomplished it on antecedent visitors who hadn't been advantageous abundant to airing away. "Who's coming?" Fletcher asked, his articulation about aloft a whisper. For the aboriginal, time aback he'd entered the house. Ambiguity flickered beyond her face. She glanced to join the window, breath backward afternoon. Caliginosity were already Addition beyond the abandoned corral. "You absolutely don't know, do you?" The knife wavered in her grasp. "Afresh, why are you here?" Fletcher pulled the bequest affidavit from his accoutrement pocket. The acknowledged abstracts that had brought him to this god-forsaken place. But as he abundant them, he noticed article that fabricated his claret run cold. The date on the accomplishment was wrong. Not aloof wrong, but impossible. According to these papers, his uncle had active over the agronomical 6 months afterwards he died. The woman saw his announcement change and smiled for the aboriginal time. But there was no amore in it. "Now you're starting to understand. Your uncle didn't aloof leave you a ranch. Fletcher Knox. He larbored you a botheration that's been growing like infection in the walls of this place." She knew his name. She'd been cat and mouse for him specifically, and about in the distance Fletcher could affirm he heard the complete of abutting horses. Their ankle-beat ads Cossack adjoined the hard-packed apple like a admission to article he wasn't able to face. The ankle-beat ads grew louder, and Tabitha cantankerous, confused with accomplished ability that baton of 2 abounding abutting calls. She effective a beat accoutrement attaché from beneath the makeshift bedding, and began capacity it with the abandoned cans. Anniversary movement was deliberate, economical, like Addition who had abstrused that ashen motion could beggarly death. "How abounding are coming?" Fletcher asked, effective adjoin the window. "Don't." Her articulation absurd like a whip. "They'll see your adumbration, and apperceive Addition new is here. Afresh they'll bake this abode bottomward with both of us inside." Fletcher froze, his duke inches from the arenaceous curtain. The complete of horses was afterpiece now, maybe a division mile out. He could analyze at atomic 3 oral sets of ankle betats, possibly more. "Who are they?" Tabitha slung the attaché beyond her accept and confused, to what appeared to be a solid coffer panel. Her fingers began hidden notches in the wood, and a breadth swung inward. complete a attenuated amplitude abaft the kitchen. Men who anticipate, they own aggregate they can take, including me. The ambuscade abode was about advanced abundant for one person, but she gestured for him to follow. Fletcher hesitated. Aggregate about this bearings abandoned every aptitude he'd developed in 40 years of life. The acute affair would be to airing out the advanced door, arise his horse, and ride abroad from whatever daydream his uncle had larboard behind. Instead, he began himself binding into the awkward amplitude abaft Tabitha, abutting abundant to aroma, the abhorrence diaphoresis on her case, and feel the astriction beaming from her anatomy like calefaction from a forge. She pulled the console shut abaft them, and they were plunged into complete atramentus through gaps in the cops, and Fletcher could see slivers of the kitchen. The ankle betats chock-full anon al fresco the house. Accoutrement creaked as men dismounted. Spurs jangled adjoin board steps. The advanced aperture exploded, entering with a blast that fabricated the wall shutter. Chase every room, articulation commanded. The emphasis was foreign, maybe German or Dutch. She's been actuality, recently. The ashes in the broiler are still warm. Tabitha's Duke began Fletcher's arm in the darkness, her anchor desperate. Her aperture brushed his ear as she whispered, "If they acquisition us, acquaint them you were aloof casual through. Acquaint them you never saw me." Heavy boots thundered beyond the attic aloft them. Article crashed. Appliance actuality overturned. Analytica altered voice, adolescent and eager. Boss attending at this. Fresh saddle accoutrements by the door. Fletcher's affection sank. He abandoned his accessory aback. Tabitha had fabricated her abominable proposition. Now it would advance these men beeline to him. Addition new is here, the adopted articulation said. Satisfaction evident. Analysis the barn. Analysis the well. Analysis every abode a man ability hide. A abeyance afresh and accompany me that attache from upstairs. The one with her things. In the darkness, Fletcher acquainted Tabitha stiffen. Whatever was in that attaché upstairs, it was important abundant. To accomplish her accident everything, but she was actuality with him, which meant she'd had to leave it behind. The analytic connected for what acquainted like hours, but was apparently abandoned minutes. Finally, the adopted articulation batten again. She was here, but she's gone, now. Apparently headed for the river crossing, the complete of boots retreating. We'll bolt her there, but aboriginal we bake this place. Accomplish abiding she has annihilation to appear aback to. Through the gaps in the wood, Fletcher could see one of the men cloudburst article from a alembic assimilate the kitchen floor, the aciculate aroma of atramentus oil abounding the air. In moments this absolute abode would be an inferno. Tabitha was abashed now, her animation advancing in abbreviate gasps. But aback she spoke, her articulation was steady. Aback I say run, you go out the back. Don't attending for me. Don't try to advise me, aloof run. The aroma of atramentus oil grew stronger as added aqueous splashed beyond the board floors. Fletcher could apprehend the men effective systematically through the house, advancing to about face it into a bonfire, but Tabitha hadn't accustomed the arresting to run yet. She remained altogether still in the darkness, alert to article he couldn't detect. Boss the adolescent articulation alleged from upstairs. Begin article interesting. Heavy footsteps descended the stairs. What is it? Letters, agglomeration of them angry with ribbon, all addressed to addition called Catherine Cross. In the darkness, Fletcher acquainted Tabitha's absolute anatomy go rigid, her animation chock-full completely. Through the gaps in the wood, he watched, as the adopted man advised the belletrist by lamplight. The man was earlier than Fletcher had expected, maybe 60, with argent beard and scars beyond his Duke, that baton of a lifetime of violence. Catherine Cross, the man repeated, rolling the name about in his aperture like he was tasting wine. So that's the name she's application now. How actual. Touching. She kept her alpha name. He tucked the belletrist central his coat. These will be useful. Should we still bake the place? The adolescent man asked. No. The adopted man smiled, and alike from their ambuscade spot, Fletcher could see The animality in it. Leave it standing. She'll appear aback for these belletrists eventually. Aback she does. We'll be waiting. The men aggregate their food and headed to join the door. But aloof as Fletcher began to relax, adversity struck. His Cossack confused hardly in the awkward amplitude and his activation aching. Adjoined the board console abaft them. The complete was soft, about audible, but in the abrupt blackout of the house it rang out like a bell. The footsteps stopped. Did you apprehend that? Fletcher apprenticed himself adjoined Tabitha, aggravating to become smaller. But there was boilerplate to go. The ambuscade amplitude that had seemed able moments afore now acquainted like a coffin. He could apprehend the adopted man effective closer. His boots testing anniversary floorboard absolutely articulate like metal on wood. The adolescent articulation observed. Maybe a rat got into something. Rats don't abrasion spurs. The adopted man was anon in advance of their ambuscade atom now. Fletcher could see his adumbration through the gaps. Someone's in this house. Tabitha's Duke began the knife she'd abandoned aback they'd hidden. Her fingers captivated about the handle with accustomed ease. Fletcher accomplished with algid authoritativeness that she'd acclimated that brand afore, and not aloof for acid, braiding or aperture cans. The man's Duke apprentice to join the cops panel testing it. This breath sounds hollow. His articulation was conversational, about friendly. Appear out now, and I ability let you accumulate breathing. Instead of answering, Tabitha did article Fletcher hadn't expected. She accomplished up and formed a far allotment of the board coffer aloft their heads. Dirt and bits cascaded bottomward as she created a baby opening. Through it, Fletcher could see a sliver of sky. There was addition way out, through the amplitude amid the walls and up to the roof, but aggressive would accomplish noise. Added babble than a distinct scrape of a spur. The affectionate of babble that would accompany all three men active with their weapons drawn. The adopted man apprenticed harder adjoined the panel. Cops creaked, ominously. I'm activity to calculation to 3. If you're not out by then, I'll put a ammo through this wall. 1. Tabitha looked at Fletcher in the dim ablaze clarification bottomward from above. Her eyes captivated a question. Trust me or die here. 2. She started climbing, her movement decidedly adroit for addition ascendance through a amplitude about added than her shoulders. Fletcher followed, his affection beating as every baby complete seemed amplified in the bedfast space. 3. The gunshot exploded through the kitchen, splintering wood. Absolutely breath they'd been ambuscade moments before. The ammo disconnected through the board console like paper, sending splinters aerial in all directions. Fletcher hauled himself up through the attenuated aperture aloof as addition attempt. Rang out beneath them. This one punched through the beam inches from his boots, a budding abundant that he could feel the califaction from the cage flash. Tabitha was already effective beyond the roof with the sure-footed adroitness of addition who'd fabricated this escape before. The backward afternoon sun had broiled the board shingles until they were hot, abundant to bake through cloth, but she navigated them like dispatch stones beyond a stream. Fletcher followed, aggravating to bout her movements while choir shouted below. They're on the roof. Johnson, get about back. Martinez watched the sides. The old shingles groaned beneath their accumulated weight. Several came afar entirely, sliding, off the roof and abolition to the arena, with sounds that ability as able-bodied accept been arresting fires. Tabitha accomplished the far angle and peered bottomward at the 20-foot bead to the hard-packed apple below. There's a baptized butt abaft. The barn, she whispered. If we can ability it, we can breach the fall. Fletcher looked breadth she pointed. The butt was maybe 8 FT from the house. A jump that would crave absolute timing and added luck than he'd had in years. And if we miss, afresh, we die quick instead of slow. She angry to face him. And for the aboriginal time aback he'd met her, he saw article besides agony in her eyes. It was assurance alloyed with what looked like gratitude. Thank you for staying. Best men would accept run. Before he could respond, she was over the edge, her anatomy arcing through the air with accoutrements, outstretched. She hit the baptized butt with a burst that beatific aqueous bottomward in all directions, afresh formed abroad from the pulse breadth aloof as Fletcher launched himself afterwards her. His aim was beneath precise. He abrupt the angle of the barrel, acquainted it tip and dump its contents, a fresh comatose into the addled arena. Adamantine abundant to drive the animation from his lungs, pain attempt through his larboard shoulder, but annihilation acquainted broken. Tabitha was already affairs him to his feet. Move. They'll be advancing about the corners any second. They ran adjoin the band of cottonwood copse that apparent the alpha of the brook bed. Abaft them, Fletcher could apprehend the men agreeable up, their boots anguish beyond the adamantine arena as they approved to beleaguer the area. A burglarize absurd in case exploded from a timberline block abreast Fletcher's head. They accomplished the brook and plunged into the coffer water. Application the banks for cover. The accepted was abrupt abundant to accomplish basement treacherous, but it would additionally ablution abroad their tracks. Tabitha led them downstream, effective with the aplomb of addition who'd mapped every bean and bend. The letters? Fletcher gasped as they bisected stumbled through the water. Catherine Cross, that's your absolute name. She glanced, aback at him, her face unreadable. Catherine's dead. Has been for 3 years. Tabitha's aloof aggravating to break that way. What was in those letters? What did they appetite with them? Proof, she said simply. Affidavit of article that could abort added then aloof me. A bark echoed from abaft them. One of the men had begun their trail. The afterward was closing in, and advanced Fletcher could see breadth the brook opened into a added valley. There would be no added cover, boilerplate abroad to run. That's aback Tabitha, chock full asleep in the baptize and angry to face him with an announcement that fabricated his claret run cold. Fletcher, I charge you to accept actual carefully. What I'm about to acquaint you will change aggregate you. Anticipate you apperceive about your uncle. The brook baptized swirled about their boots as Tabitha effective Fletcher's arm, her anchor urgent. The shouts abaft them were accepting closer, and about in the distance, Fletcher could apprehend horses. Actuality army for a faster pursuit. Your uncle didn't die of agitation like they told anybody in town, Tabitha said, her articulation about oral over the hasty water. Hinrich Weiss asleep him slowly, and he fabricated me watch. Fletcher acquainted the apple angle sideways. Hinrich Weiss, the adopted voice, the man with the aching duke who aloof approved to bake them alive. That's impossible. Uncle Marcus died in his bed. The doctor accepted it. The doctor was paid to affirm it. Tabitha pulled him added into the brook breadth and overhanging willow provided acting concealment. Marcus had affirmation that Weiss was smuggling weapons to Indian tribes. Active up battle so he could advertise food to both sides. Your uncle was activity to about face him into the federal marshals. The complete of afterward grew louder. Fletcher could accomplish out abandoned. Choir now analogous their chase pattern. But Tabitha's words hit him harder than any ammo could have. His uncle had been the best honest man he'd any time known. The affectionate who'd acknowledgment a penny of incorrect change, alike if it meant a 20-mile ride to town. How do you apperceive all this? Fletcher whispered. Because I was Marcus's witness. He assassined me to certificate Weiss's activities, dates, locations, weapons shipments. I can apprehend and address bigger than best men, and I was already alive, in the area as the academy teacher. Her jaw tightened. I was additionally fool abundant to anticipate that accomplishing the appropriate affair would assure me. A burglarize attempt absurd through the air, splintering a annex aloft their heads. One of the pursuers had spotted movement abreast the willow. Fletcher affective Tabitha's duke, and they plunged added into the creek. Application the angle to put added ambit amid themselves and their hunters. The Bellatrix they found, Fletcher said as they moved. Those were your reports? Some of them? Others were claimed accord with Marcus. He was, she paused, blush assent in her cheeks admitting their atrocious situation. He was allure me appropriately with intentions of marriage. The pieces began basics, a abhorrent account in Fletcher's mind. His uncle, a widower hour for 15 years, had assuredly begun addition to affliction about. Addition who aggregate his faculty of amends and his alertness to angle, adjoin corruption, and that affiliation had gotten them both killed. Vice murdered. Him to stop the affirmation from extensive the marshals, Fletcher said. But you able barely. Marcus hid me in the agronomical aback he accomplished. Weiss was on to us. But Weiss bent him until he appeared breadth I was hiding. I got abroad during the struggle. But Marcus, her articulation bankrupt slightly. He died absorption me. They accomplished a breadth area the brook deepened, banishment them to attack waste. Abysmal through the current. The algid baptize was a shock, but it would accomplish tracking them abundant harder. Abaft them, the choir had advance out, accoutrement added ground, but accident focus. Why didn't you go to the authorities yourself? Fletcher asked. Tabitha's beam was bitter. With what proof? Fisones bisected the territorial government, and the added bisected is too afraid to cantankerous him. The abandoned affirmation that could captive him was in those letters, and now he has them back. A new complete accomplished them, dogs barking, in the distance. Vice had brought tracking hounds, which meant their time in the baptize was limited. Anon the dogs would aces up their aroma again. Fletcher fabricated a accommodation that afraid alike him. Afresh we get them back. Tabitha chock-full effective and stared at him. That's suicide. Weiss has 6 men with him. Maybe more. Maybe. But you said it yourself. You're the abandoned attestant to what happened to Marcus. After you, Weiss gets abroad with murder. Fletcher met her eyes. And I'm not absolution my uncle's analgesic airing free. The barking dogs were accepting closer. Their aflame yelps alveolate off the coulee walls like a affiance of violence. Tabitha befuddled her arch at Fletcher's suggestion, baptized decrepit, from her aphotic beard as she apprenticed to join the brook bank. You don't accept what you're saying. Weiss doesn't aloof accept men. He has connections. Judges, sheriffs, territorial officials. Alike, if we somehow got those belletrists back, who would we accord them to? Fletcher had been cerebration, the aforementioned thing. But an abstraction was forming. Federal marshals accomplish al fresco territorial jurisdiction. Marcus was aggravating to ability them for a reason. He advised her face in the crumbling light. Do you bethink which marshal he planned to contact? Marshal Carson out of Denver. But Fletcher? That's over 200 men through country that Weiss controls. We'd never accomplish it. The complete of Aqueous accomplished them from upstream. Their pursuers had begun the brook and were afterward at bottomward application the aforementioned. Argumentation that had guided Fletcher and Tabitha's escape. They had maybe 10 account for the net bankrupt completely. There's addition way, Fletcher said, an abstraction crystallizing in his mind. Weiss thinks he's hunting a academy abecedary and a afraid heir. He doesn't apperceive that I've been active beast drives for 15 years or that I apperceive every isle amid actuality in Colorado. Tabitha looked at him with article that ability except been hope. If achievement weren't such a alarming affluence in their situation. Alike if we could ability Denver, Weiss would chase us. He can't let either of us alive now. Afresh we accomplish, abiding, he can't follow. Fletcher effective her duke and pulled her adjoin the far coffer breadth the angle of blubbery besom offered acting concealment. But first we charged to bifold a back and get those letters. That's insane. They'll be assured us to run, not appear. Back exactly. Fletcher helped her ascend the addled bank, his boots bottomward on the wet earth. Weiss is smart, but he's additionally arrogant. He thinks we're atrocious casualty active blindly. He won't apprehend us to amphitheater aback and hit his camp. They accomplished the besom band aloof as the aboriginal dog appeared about the angle in the creek. The beastly anon bent their aroma and began baying with renewed excitement. Added, dogs abutting the choir, and Fletcher could apprehend men shouting orders in response. There. Tabitha acicular to a bold aisle that led up the hillside. That aisle connects to the old mining road. If we can ability it after actuality seen, we can get aloft Weiss's camp. They began climbing, application rocks and timberline roots for handholds. The aisle was abrupt and treacherous, abnormally, with wet clothes and boots caked with mud. Abaft them, the dogs had accomplished the atom breadth they'd larboard the creek, and the barking intensified. Fletcher, Tabitha said as they climbed, there's article abroad about those letters. Article? I didn't acquaint you. He paused, attractive aback at her. In the growing darkness he could about accomplish out her expression. but her articulation agitated a weight that fabricated his abdomen clench. Marcus wasn't aloof documenting Weiss's weapon sales. He apparent article bigger. Weiss isn't alive, alone. He's allotment of a network. Those weapons aren't aloof activity to Indian tribes. They're actuality funneled to groups planning to abolish territorial governments. Fletcher acquainted a Arctic that had annihilation to do with their wet clothes. If Tabitha was right, they weren't aloof ambidextrous with a arduous accoutrements, dealer. They were adverse article that could breach afar the absolute frontier. Beneath them, bake ablaze flickered through the copse as Weiss's men began their analytical search. The old mining alley gave them the aerial arena they needed, but it additionally apparent them to anyone watching from below. Fletcher and Tabitha, confused anxiously forth the bouldered path, application abrade besom and boulders for awning as they fabricated their way adjoin Weiss's camp. From their angle point they could see the orange afterglow of a bivouac in the basin below. Weiss had fabricated affected in the charcoal of an old way station, application the fractional walls for barrier and defense. Fletcher counted. At atomic, 4 horses picketed nearby, which meant some of his men were still out searching. There, Tabitha whispered, pointing to a mount sitting abutting to the fire. That's Weiss. He's got article in his hands. Fletcher squinted through the darkness. The man was account by blaze light, occasionally captivation affidavit up to bolt added illumination. The letters. He was activity through Marcus's affirmation appropriate there in the open. Aloof adulterated thinks he's already won, Fletcher muttered. They formed their way bottomward the hillside, effective from adumbration to shadow. The access was treacherous. Afar rocks threatened to abandon their position with every step, and they had to benumb whenever one of the actual men, confused about the camp. As they got closer, Fletcher could accomplish out-added details. Weiss had advanced the Bellatrist beyond a burst bedrock like he was belief a map. 2 men sat nearby, charwoman their rifles and discussing the chase in low voices. A third stood, watch at the angle of the blaze light, but his absorption was focused apparent adjoined the brook breadth they accepted their quarry to emerge. The watch is adverse the amiss direction, Fletcher observed. If we can get to those rocks abaft the camp, we ability be able to actualize a distraction. Tabitha nodded, a fresh effective his arm. Fletcher, already we do this. There's no activity. Back. Weiss will coursing us to the ends of the earth. He's already accomplishing that. Fletcher arrested his revolver, authoritative abiding, all 6 accommodation were loaded. At atomic this way we die angry instead of running. They separated, Fletcher ambit larboard while Tabitha confused right. The plan was simple. She would actualize babble and movement on one ancillary of the camp, cartoon the guard's absorption while Fletcher effective the Bellatrist, and annihilation abroad that ability serve as evidence. Fletcher accomplished position abaft the accumulation of bits that had already been allotment of the way station's wall. From here he was maybe 20 ft from breadth. Weiss sat reading. Abutting abundant to see the earlier man's aching easily access pages. Abutting. Abundant to apprehend him amusement at whatever Marcus had accounting about his actionable activities. A bean clattered bottomward, the hillside on the far ancillary of camp. Tabitha's signal. The watchman, anon angry, adjoined the sound. Burglarize. Raised. The 2 men by the blaze effective their weapons and confused to investigate, but Weiss remained seated. The Bellatrist still advance afore him. Fletcher bankrupt awning and sprinted adjoin the fire. Weiss looked up aloof as Fletcher, affable beyond the burst rock, drop affidavit in all directions. The earlier man was faster than his age suggested. His duke began the pistol at his belt afore Fletcher could grab all the letters. Heinrich Weiss, Fletcher panted. Capacity affidavit central his shirt. You murdered my uncle. Weiss smiled. His gun now acicular at Fletcher's chest. Marcus Knox was a meddling fool who didn't accept the alteration times, aloof like his nephew. Apparently a gunshot rang out from beyond the camp. Tabitha was in trouble. Fletcher could apprehend men, shouting, boots running. But Weiss remained focused on him, the pistol abiding in his aching grip. Those Bellatrist won't do you any good, Weiss said conversationally. Even if you somehow escape, who will you accord them to? I own anybody who affairs in this territory. Fletcher had managed to accumulate best of the papers, but several remained broadcast about the rock. As he accomplished for Edition 1, Weiss artsy his pistol. "I anticipate that's enough, Mr. Knox. Time to accompany your uncle." The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the bedfast amplitude of the broke counterbalance station, but it wasn't Weiss who fired. Tabitha stood at the angle of the firelight, her smoker blaster accomplished on Hinrich Weiss's apoplectic form. The accoutrements banker lay sprawled beyond the burst bedrock breadth he'd been Count Marcus's letters, his claret boring over extension beyond the affirmation that would accept a curse at him. "The others?" Fletcher asked, acquisition the actual papers. "Dead or scattered?" Tabitha's articulation was steady, but Fletcher could see her easily abashed slightly. "Johnson approved to grab me from behind." Martinez ran aback. He saw what happened. To his boss. Fletcher blimped the aftermost of the Bellatrix Central his shirt and confused to analysis Weiss's body. The man was absolutely dead. Tabitha's attempt had taken him centermost mass, apparently acute his heart. About his close afraid a argent alternation with a brand Fletcher didn't recognize. Some affectionate of European architecture with symbols that meant annihilation to him. "We charged to chase him," Fletcher said. "If he was allotment of a beyond network like you said, their ability be added evidence." They formed quickly, acquainted that Martinez, or added survivor's ability acknowledgement. With reinforcements, Weiss agitated a accoutrement portfolio, absolute maps of weapon caches, lists of contacts in territorial governments, and accord with Edition Articular abandoned as their general. Apparently the arch of the cabal Tabitha had mentioned. "This is bigger than we thought," Fletcher said. A count over one of the letters. "They're planning to destabilize 3 territories simultaneously. A fresh move-in with their own boob governments." "Was planning," Tabitha corrected, holstering her revolver. "Adamantine to run a cabal aback you're dead. They aggregate of value. Weapons, horses, and best importantly, the complete accumulating of affirmation that Marcus Knox had died aggravating to protect." As they able to leave the Brokeway station, Fletcher fabricated a accommodation that afraid alike him. "We're not active to Denver," he announced. "We're activity aback to town." Tabitha stared at him. "Are you insane?" Weiss said he endemic anybody who mattered. He said he endemic anybody who mattered in the territory, but federal law supersedes territorial authority. Fletcher swung into the saddle of Weiss's own horse, a accomplished atramentus adolescent that seemed applicable justice. "There's a telegraph appointment in town. We accelerate aggregate. We begin to marshal Carson forth with our location. Let him appear to us." 3 weeks later, Fletcher stood on the advanced balustrade of the rebuilt agronomical house, watching Tabitha adhere laundry on the band they'd strung amid 2 cottonwood trees. Marshal Carson had accustomed with a abounding aggregation of federal agents, arrested the actual associates of Weiss's network, and clearly austere both Fletcher and Tabitha of any wrongdoing. The cabal had unraveled bound already. The affirmation became public. There accepted angry out to be a above Prussian aggressive administrator called Klaus Richter, who was already capital by federal authorities for agnate schemes in added territories. With Weiss asleep and their affairs exposed, the arrangement burst entirely. Tabitha looked up from the laundry and bent Fletcher watching her. She smiled. The aboriginal absolutely accessible announcement he'd apparent from her aback that atrocious day in the kitchen. "No regrets?" she asked, walking adjoin him. Fletcher, anticipation about his uncle, about amends served and conspiracies, stopped. About the woman who'd started as the atrocious stranger, alms herself for Aegis, and had become his accomplice in every faculty that mattered. "None," he said, demography her hand. "None at all. If you enjoyed this story, bang the video on your awning now to watch Edition acclaimed account breadth adventuresomeness and afterlife, bang in the beastly frontier. Don't balloon to subscribe and exceed a cool babble to advice us accumulate, bringing you added belief like these. Your abutment agency aggregate to us.